I've been spooked. Not once, not twice, but thrice times in the past 48 hours. Once by my own choice, twice by invited guests. I have to say, online via email. Marshall Davis emailed me the other day. Not just me, you understand, although I like to feel that Marshall and I are singing from the same hymn sheet, if you know what I mean. Let's call it, if we must label it, let's call it Christian non-duality, shall we? And he'd had what he calls a vision, and he describes it in detail. It was in a sort of semi-conscious waking state between sleep and awake. Essentially, it was a premonition. He won't call it a prophecy. It was a premonition of the result of the 2028 U.S. election. And as usual, there were two major candidates. The Democrat candidate won, but the Republican candidate refused to accept the result. He thought that the candidate in 2028 might be J.D. Vance, and so they disputed the result of the fair election, and as a consequence the incumbent president, the Donald, also known as the Mango Mussolini, refused to step aside, and thus began a period of fascist rule in the States. And Marshall was very spooked by this, and so was I. And he linked to an article on Substack, which was an analysis of the outcome and length of every fascist dictatorship in recent times, of which there are surprisingly many, not just the obvious ones you can think of, but many others, and current ones, including Hungary. I noted, it's always good to call a spade with these things, and not once have any of these fascist dictatorships come to power violently. Surprising, I was surprised. They all started off being democratically voted into power by the intelligent electorate, and then the dictator dealt with all his enemies on the left and the right and the media. Sound familiar? Yes, all too familiar. So that spooked me, number two. And then spook number three, by my own hand, I'd read very good reviews of the new film with Leonardo DiCaprio and Sean Penn called One Battle After Another. And I went to see it the other night, and I walked out after an hour. I found it too disturbing. Don't get me wrong, it is absolutely brilliant. The storyline, the action, the characters, very believable. In particular, Sean Penn is wonderful. I'm not a big fan of Sean Penn, but I am now. And very, for me, disturbing. And I couldn't work out. I'm sitting in my seat in a half-empty cinema, and I was following the action and engaged with it. And then when the French 75 revolutionary group was busted by the American Secret Service and the bad boys, and they got the names that they wanted. This group, by the way, of revolutionaries, they were releasing detainees, immigrants from the Mexico border compounds. That's where the action took place initially. And it all became too much for me. Far too close to home. It's set in a not very distant future. And all my senses just repulsed. And I can only use the word accomplice. I felt an accomplice by my not speaking up about the rise of authoritarianism in this country. I can't believe what a supposedly Labour, which used to be left of centre, no longer. I can't believe what our Home Secretary is doing now. She is putting forward to Parliament the idea that consecutive protests, sort of pro and anti a cause, should no longer be allowed because it causes too much of a rumpus. Well, that's not right. And so I felt like, you know, the scene in the Star Wars where Harrison Ford and his collaborators, they get dumped in the trash compactor in the basement of the starship, whatever it's called, the Death Star, and the walls start to come in. Oh yes, and it could be curtains. Well, that's how I felt. Triple jeopardy, triple spooked, the walls and the ceiling coming in on me. So the only sensible thing to do, I haven't processed this yet, I think I need a coffee first, don't you? I've been on my river cruise on the River X for an hour or so. Fresh air, fresh thoughts perhaps. There is that saying, all it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And I suppose this is part of the reason why I felt spooked. Not once, but 3 times. I used the word accomplice. It feels like if I'm silent, if I'm mute, if I'm passive, and I can see the direction that authoritarian politics leads us, which is what we're heading towards. Certainly it seems to me in America, and the rise of the far right here in Britain and other countries in Europe, and in the recent election in Czech Republic, a populist billionaire won the vote. Now, I'm not sure whether that means autocracy or not, wait and see, but there is a recurring pattern towards populist authoritarianism. I wasn't around in the 1930s, and I wasn't in Germany, although my grandfather was. And I just have to ask the question, what would I have done? Would I have spoken out against the rise of nationalism in Germany? As first of all, the Jews were ostracized, and then genocide followed not so many years after. I read somewhere recently, it only took, I think it was 6 months in between the Nazis being voted, democratically voted into power. They handed the keys to Hitler, the Chancellor, actually invited Hitler to form a government. I guess at the prospect of there being some more violent insurrection. But it was only 6 months before the killings started, or at least the windows and the shops and the anti-Semitism became violent. And I suppose at the root of it, this is why Marshall Davis, You Spooked Me, the article on no fascists have come to power that undemocratically spooked me, and why the film One Battle Then Another also spooked me. What spooked you these days? And are you keeping silent like me?